Welcome AP Economics students. This is Ms. Foley, and the purpose of this video is to go over sample exam questions that were released from the College Board to help you prepare for the macroeconomics exam. Some of these are multiple choice questions, and some of these are free response questions. So let's get started. When you take a look at these questions, and by the way, I distributed a hard copy, so feel free to write on that hard copy, or if you just want to pay attention to this video, that's fine too. First question, you might see something like this in microeconomics or macroeconomics. It's an intro to econ question. It's about PPC curves. The graph above shows the production possibilities curve for a small township that is deciding to build parks and gymnasiums. Which of the following combinations of parks and gymnasiums is unattainable given the township's available resources? So all we do is we take a look at parks and we take a look at gymnasiums and we plot these points. If any of these, when we plot these, are on the PPC curve, that means that they can be done. If it's anything that is below the PPC curve, so on the leftward side here near the origin, those can be done as well. The only thing that is unattainable is things that are above where the PPC curve. So the correct answer here is 20 parks and 4 gymnasiums. I plotted that in yellow on the graph. The only way that that could possibly happen is if this particular township sustains some economic growth. Okay? Moving on to question 2, definitely some introduction unit here with supply and demand. Which of the following changes would result in a indeterminate? You might see the word indeterminate, you might see the word ambiguous, you might see the word unclear, change in the equilibrium price in a perfectly competitive market. So this means which one of these shifts is going to shift is going to make price go in two different directions. So when I do two different shifts, an increase in demand is going to make price go up, and an increase in supply is going to make price go down. So letter B, that is price is indeterminate in that situation. That is the correct answer. The other answer choices either both move price up or both move price down. Question number 3. Which of the following is accounted in the calculation of a country's gross domestic product? Stocks and bonds? No, that's never in GDP. Change in inventories? Yes, that is accounted in investment spending. Remember that C plus G plus I plus net exports. Product quality is not calculated in GDP. The underground or black market is not counted in GDP, and any non-market activities, things like leisure or volunteer work, is not counted in GDP. Number 4, the population of country X is 250,000 and the labor force is 200,000 people. If 175,000 people are employed, what is the unemployment rate? So they're always going to give you usually population, the labor force. You need to make sure you remember what is the unemployment rate equation. And that is the number of unemployed people over the labor force. So if there's 200,000 people in the labor force and 175,000 people are employed, that must mean that 25,000 of those people are unemployed. We throw that over the labor force and we get a 12.5% unemployment rate. Which of the following will happen if the government raises both taxes and spending by 100 million and the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8? So the most important thing, and guarantee that they're going to ask you a type of question like this, is that you remember the difference between the government spending multiplier, which is 1 over MPS, and the taxes multiplier, which is negative MPC over MPS. When I plug in if my marginal propensity to consume is 0.8, that must mean that my marginal propensity to save is 0.2. So for government spending, 1 divided by 0.2 is going to be 5. So GDP for government spending can go up by 500 million. For taxes, it's going to go down if we increase taxes because by 400 million. So Increasing government spending is an expansionary fiscal policy. Increasing taxes is a contractionary fiscal policy. So they're going in different directions. However, the government spending is a little more is a little stronger. So that means that since 500 million minus 400 million, that's going to be a maximum increase of $100 million. Moving on to number 6, which the following would lead to an increase in the nominal interest rate. So what we need here, we're having multiple things shift. We're having monetary policy, which is going to be shifting the money supply curve either left or right. Expansionary will make money supply move right, and that's going to drop nominal interest rate. So I'm zoning in on contractionary monetary policy because that's going to decrease the money supply and make interest rates go up. And then what is going to make interest rates go up? Money demand going up or money demand going down? And that's going to be money demand going up. So that is letter D. And to visualize that, which is something you should get into the habit of doing, always feel free to sketch a money supply, money demand curve so that you can actually visually see that, and it makes it a lot easier for you. Moving on, a country's economy is equilibrium at point H. Which of the following policies would be most effective to reducing the price level in the short run? So we have an inflationary gap, and the way to fix an inflationary gap is to do contractionary policy. Increase in the minimum wage is no change. That has nothing to do with changing the aggregate demand curve. Increasing government spending is expansionary. That would make the inflationary gap worse. Increasing the interest on reserves. That is doing the IORB. That is a contractionary policy. That would certainly shift 80 to the left and fix us. So that is the correct answer. The other two, decreasing the required reserve ratio is expansionary, and decreasing income tax rates is also expansionary. Also, just so you know, they would be very clear telling you, like, hey, you're in an ample reserve system, so it's IORB, or you're in limited reserve system, which is usually the default. Country H's current domestic output is lower than its potential domestic output. Assume that the central bank now decreases its administered interest rates, so that's the IORB. What will be the short-run effects of the central bank's action on cyclical unemployment and real income? So I said that cyclical unemployment will decrease and real income will increase, because that's what happens when we decrease IORB, that is expansionary monetary policy. Number 9, an increase in demand for loanable funds can best be explained by which of the following. So remember, demand shifts for two reasons. Number 1, government spending, and number 2, perceived business opportunities. So I see them talking about government budget, but if government budget is in a surplus, they would actually decrease their demand for loanable funds. So that would go down. So C is the correct answer, because an increase in firms' optimism, that's that perceived business opportunity. That would be the correct answer there. Moving on. Number 10, if both contractionary monetary policy and contractionary fiscal policy are carried out, what most likely will happen to interest rates and real GDP? So contractionary monetary policy, most popular in a limited reserve system, is selling bonds. That would mean that money supply would go down, nominal interest rate would go up, aggregate demand would go down, and GDP would go down. Okay. If we did contractionary fiscal policy, that might be something like decreasing government spending, decreasing government transfers, or increasing taxes. So for both of those, the real GDP will decrease in both situations, but interest rates go down with the fiscal policy because you're increasing taxes or you're decreasing government spending. And when you sell bonds, which is the monetary policy, that's going to increase the nominal interest rate. So it's indeterminate. The monetary policy is pushing interest rates up. The fiscal policy is pushing interest rates down. So that's why we choose E, that the interest rates would be indeterminate, or another word they like to use is ambiguous. Number 11, if an economy is currently in a recessionary gap, which of the following changes would result in an increase in real GDP in the short run and a decrease in the price level in the long run? So what I have here is we are looking, so a recessionary gap, and we also want price level to go down. So we would want SRAS to increase. And to visualize that for you, I drew what a recessionary gap would look like. And if we wanted price level to go down, we wouldn't want AD to go up because, yeah, that would fix the recessionary gap, but that would not help us with our price level. We want SRAS to increase, and that's going to lower the price level. So when we look at the answer choices, E, there's an increase in the productivity of the economy's resources. SRAS is going to increase. Number 12, if the government offers a tax credit to businesses, what will most likely be the effect of this action? There will be an increase in investment spending. That's what is linked to with businesses, an increase in capital stock, and an increase in real output. So for number 12, that's kind of just a concept. That's letter C. Number 13, if an economy experiences an improvement in technology, what will happen to its PPC curve and its LRAS? Technology is one of those things. So we usually say increase in technology, we say increase in human capital, and we also say increase in physical stock. Those are things that ultimately lead to economic growth. And when we have economic growth, our PPC curve will shift to the right, aka outward, and our LRAS will shift to the right. So both curves will shift outward or to the right because it's demonstrating economic growth. Number 14, we've got a Phillips curve for number 14. The diagram above shows the short-run Phillips curve and long-run Phillips curve for the economy. If the rate of inflation is at 6%, what is the current unemployment rate? All I have to do is see where inflation is 6, which I highlighted on the graph, and I bring that down to the unemployment rate, and ta-da, it is 2%. Number 15, if the United States budget deficit increases, what will most likely happen to the United States dollar in the foreign exchange market? So if the budget deficit increases, what is going to happen is it will appreciate because interest rates increase. When you hear interest rates, there's two things that you should be thinking about. You might be thinking about investment spending, and that will certainly go down. But you would also be thinking about and by the way, let me back up for a second. The budget deficit increases. How does the government pay its bills? It pays its bills by borrowing money. So that's why I drew a loanable funds curve right to the right of this. Government borrowing, that's one of the things that shifts the demand curve. If that goes up, what that is saying is that interest rates are going to increase. And the second thing that you should be thinking about with interest rates is capital flows. So people in other countries say, wow, look at those high interest rates. Let me go put my money in that country so that I can earn those high interest rates too. And that is where we have our increase in appreciation because of those interest rate increase. Okay. The next thing that we have are some free response questions. I'm going to post these answers. It's a really good idea. I'd like you to try these, okay? I'm going to post these answers and exactly the rubric so you can see how you are graded for those free response questions. And if you have any comments questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.